Is structural racism in New Jersey to blame for poverty and other problems? Welcome back to Jersey Matters. There is a study out now that says yes, it is. Renee Koubiadis is Executive Director of the Anti-Poverty Network of New Jersey. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And you have conducted this study.
Well, we convened a large working group of great policy advocates and experts from across the state who know the policy areas that we wanted to tackle.
Let me go back to the beginning, though, because you hear the term structural racism all the time, and I think it's just thrown around without definition.
Right.
Can you define it?
Sure. So the way we defined it in the report is something that is not intentional or overt racism. We're not blaming individuals, but these are things that are just embedded within our structures after years of policy and you know, the things that we don't recognize in our everyday life unless we really do stop to take a look at them, because they're just things that have always been there.
That's an important point, and that's why I was going to jump in there for a second, because you're not saying that the people who are involved in the system necessarily are racist. Right. They are just in a system that's been structurally racist for a long time.
Right. We have had policies within our state, and some from the federal down to the local level. For a long time, they created segregated housing in New Jersey. We released another report last May, The Cost of Poverty, that showed how we are one of the most segregated states in the nation in New Jersey, the third most segregated, because we have pushed people of color and extreme poverty into most of our urban areas, big and small. And now they are stuck with the least amount of taxes and revenue to deal with that great need. Meanwhile, neighboring municipalities might have the revenue and tax space, but not the need any longer.
So when you're talking about revenue and tax space, that's important because city services are then affected, schooling is then affected, just about everything's affected by the tax base.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that's exactly what you're talking about. I understand that there's a belief there's structural racism, but looking at an effect and looking at a cause are very difficult things to bring together when you're talking about something like it being racist.
Sure, sure. And certainly, like I said, policies have created this structural racism over years, but we really concentrated on the effect as the reason that we see structural racism.
Because the effect isn't always necessarily, it doesn't always necessarily correlate, right?
Right.
Just because you have an effect that, for instance, there's high black unemployment, it doesn't necessarily mean it's because of racism.
Sure, intentional personal racism, right? But certainly our structures can have embedded policies and systems in place that create that effect.
Finding a problem is always easy. Finding a solution is always much more difficult.
Sure.
Does your report come with solutions?
Yes, we have 5 overarching solutions in the report. The first being making ending structural racism an explicit priority of our state and our leaders. Also, creating legislation that will enforce racial and ethnic impact statements for every piece of legislation going forward in our state. So the Office of Legislative Services would have to take a look at that, much like they do with making a financial impact statement on legislation currently. We also asked...
Stop for 1 second, because the cause and effect with that would be just as difficult as I was talking about a moment ago. You would have to see how it's going to affect everything you do, how it's going to affect individuals. And there is a possibility, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a possibility when you put that kind of hurdle on something that it may have unintended consequences.
Right, right. And so actually there's legislation that was adopted by the Senate Assembly this year that would require racial and ethnic impact statements for legislation around criminal justice sentencing. That bill was conditionally vetoed by the governor, and we are waiting for the legislature to convene again to accept those changes so that that can become law.
Okay, and I cut you off. And what were some of the other, you started off by telling me a couple things.
Yeah, so the third would be that we ask for more data collection around racial and ethnicity and poverty numbers in our state, because we don't collect enough of that data, especially around criminal justice when we were researching the report. And then also we used to have an Office of the Public Advocate, and unfortunately that went away several years ago. And so we're asking for that to be brought back so that we can really have somebody who can take take a look at the systems and departments within our state for any of these unintended consequences, right? And then the last one would be to strengthen the Division of Civil Rights in New Jersey.
And so what you would need is somebody to be interested in this. Is there been interest in Trenton?
Yes, we've actually talked with a few legislators and certainly have been trying to communicate with the gubernatorial candidates.
And I know there's going to be people out there that are going to go, okay, great. Here is going to be something happening, legislation happening that's going to help Hispanics and blacks, which is great, but I'm white and I'm not doing well.
Sure. Right.
How do you help them?
This is really about rising tides that lift all boats, right? So when people of color are succeeding, we all succeed. And a large number of the population in our state are prevented from really fully participating in the marketplace. They're underemployed, they're putting, kind of cobbling together part-time jobs instead of a full-time job sometimes, or not employed at all, and they've disappeared from the numbers that we count in the census and with other statistics. But they're still there and they just can't survive, especially in our high-cost state. And so when those people can participate in the economy and actually buy the things that they need because they're going without basic necessities right now. Research has shown with things like the Earned Income Tax Credit, when people get that money in their pocket, they're spending it immediately and in the community because they need things. It's not like they're putting that money in savings when they get it. They actually need things that they're going without. And so it helps our economy, our state's economy overall. Sometimes
collateral effect isn't damage. Sometimes collateral effect is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being in here. Renee Koubiadis, who is the Executive Director of the Anti-Poverty Network of New Jersey. When we come back, meet a man who is trying to change the world one garden at a time.